Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in.
And I am your host, Tricia Carr. Thank you so much for being here today. And we are broadcasting live from the Universal Broadcasting Network studios in Hollywood, California. I'm so pleased that you're here with me. However you're listening or watching, today your timing is perfect. And just to let you know all the different ways that you can be a part of the show, we go live every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific on UBN Radio Channel 1. So that's ubnradio.com Channel 1, or on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Tricia Carr Charm. And so if you already catch us live and you're wondering, hey, I missed this one Sunday because it's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. And if you are missing this show because you spent it with your mother, well, bless you. And if you are able to catch us with your mother, well, bless your mother too. And so if you want to catch it in an archived, you can actually find it on my Facebook page, but it's actually easier to find it on YouTube. And my YouTube channel is just youtube.com/Tricia Carr. And it's TRICIACARR. And so I put the video episodes up on my YouTube channel the next day. And there's also other kinds of videos up there. I do all kinds of videos between like 7 and 10 minutes or 20 minutes even, teaching different spiritual topics. However, I'm moved or inspired by spirit. Sometimes I do something like an energy download that comes through on a video. So do please subscribe, like, and share on the YouTube channel. And then, of course, the audio archives go out on podcast streams. So you can find it on iTunes and Stitcher and Spreaker, I believe. Just look for Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. And the more that you join in this by downloading, subscribing, and leaving reviews and all that kind of stuff, the more then we can actually take this conversation to more people because, it actually aggregates it higher in the search engines and stuff. So thank you for participating in this conversation about spiritual awakening and mindful living, which is the topic of today's show. And my guest is an amazing coach and intuitive. Her clients appreciate working with her because she brings a broad range of in-depth skills to the work that she does with each of those clients. And also because she has a successful podcast called Mindful Living Spiritual Awakening. Her skills include mindfulness, mind-body coaching, adult development, and relationship development, as well as her having a background in coaching, psychology, and personal development. Her name is Marijo, and she has 6 years of in-depth energy healing training at the Barbara Brennan School for Healing, and as well as her own lifelong intuitive and spiritual development and her work with her spirit guides. So as a result, she often blends personal and professional development and energy field awareness in her work with clients. And again, her name is Dr. Marijo Puleo. Thank you for being here, Marijo.
Thank you very much, Tricia. I'm delighted to be here today. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I really love your podcast. Marijo's podcast is really intelligent and really just covers a broad range of whatever topic she is covering for that episode. You do, and you have the show notes. You have actually the transcript of the podcast available, which I think is brilliant because it's so packed full of so much education that it's great to listen to, I think, and then go back and look at the transcript, look at all the different areas that she offers for educational resources, and then listen to it again. That's what I would say. How do you like that? I'm telling people to listen to it at least twice.
And I get a lot of emails. People do listen to it at least twice because there is so much that I offer. And it takes a while to take it in and to really integrate what I offer in each episode.
It's really dense. It is. I remember you said when we had our pre-meeting, you mentioned that it takes you about 40 hours to prepare a podcast episode. Is that right?
It's about 40 hours a week.
Oh, okay.
And I do this every other week.
Oh, okay. So it's about 80 hours. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, between 60 and 80 hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
So really, I cannot recommend it more highly. You can find her on, pretty much all of the podcast outlets, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Quite a few of them.
So actually, can you tell everyone how to find you? Because I like to do that at the top of the show and the bottom of the show, and sometimes I forget to do it at the top of the show. Tell folks how they can find you, and they can listen to the rest of our episode here, fall in love with you, and then they'll want to be reminded how to find you.
Awesome. The easiest way is to go to my website, marijopuleo.com, MARIJOPULEO.com. And also sign up for the email list. And occasionally I send out emails with reminders. But that's pretty much the easiest way to find me.
Yeah, and you have your podcast up on there as well. And then all of the different services that you provide. So, well, now then, if you don't mind, why don't you go let people into your world? Tell us about your journey and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I started out a pretty typical life. Worked in corporate for a long time. I was a management consultant. Underneath or hidden, I always had these intuitive gifts that I would use, but always in secret. And for example, when I was a management consultant, I would show up at a company, and after about 3 days, I'd say, you got a lot going on over here. You got this happening over here, and you got that happening over there. And people would look at me and they're like, how do you know all of this?
Right.
And I'd say, I don't know. I just kind of know. Like I was noticing on so many different levels, partly intuitive.
Yeah. Did you realize that it was like an intuitive gift, or did you, because I know for myself in particular, I didn't realize it was different. Like how I was perceiving things was really different. I knew I was different from people, but I didn't realize, I didn't identify it as like kind of this intuitive sensing that other people maybe weren't as conscious of. Does that make sense? Were you aware of it?
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think some of it was I had a little bit of a sense of what I was doing. I remember years ago going on the internet and trying to find out more about it. And I'd get in these chat groups, this is long before Facebook. I'm that old. And I would get in these chat groups and people would be talking about crystals and, ascended masters and angels. And I'm just like, it's not me. And I would run. Like I couldn't own my gifts. I knew there was something happening, but I couldn't own it. Like it was so overwhelming to see what other people were doing. And I was just like, oh, no, that's not me. And so there was always this little base level of awareness of what I was doing. I knew I was a light worker, but I didn't really know what that meant. And through along the way, I found other people who were sort of similar, but I was really corporate.
Interesting.
And every time you went a little woo, people were like,
that social conditioning of no, I'm not supposed to be tricked by things like that.
Yeah. So I'd run back in my hole, and then I'd go back to doing it in the secret. And at one point my gifts were really opening up for me, but it was really intrusive. Like I'd be sitting in a meeting and all of a sudden I could feel a person and they're getting all emotional and going off the rails. And I'm trying to concentrate on my work. And I have this telepathy thing going. I didn't know it was telepathy. I just had this thing going. And it just got so overwhelming. I actually shut it all down at one point.
Oh, interesting.
I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then around the same time I got fired.
Oh.
And it was an interesting experience. And, there was a lot of ego stuff going on with me. And I was always, I had to be like one of the top employees. And I always had to make sure I was so afraid on the inside that I had to make sure everything on the outside looked good.
Right. That's I think that's very common. Yeah, especially for our light worker. We tend to be perfectionists on this outside part because, we're very sensitive to, I'm sure we're going to be talking about our energy bodies because that's a lot of your work. But I think we're very sensitive in all areas of our energy body, like all of our chakras. So our root chakra is just as sensitive. And the root chakra and the crown chakra work together. So the root chakra is like, we have to make sure we're extremely safe so that we can have our spiritual awakening, Right. Yeah. We can own it.
Yeah. And, in the list of the bad things that could happen to me, getting fired wasn't even on the list.
Oh. You didn't expect it at all, right?
No.
Is that what you mean?
When it happened to me, it really kicked the can down the road. It was a huge wake-up call to me.
Wow. You were ambushed, basically.
I had some serious work to do. And there was just so much that came up with all of that. That for 6 months, I'm not kidding, every morning I would stand at the coffee maker and I had 2 batons in my hand. And one baton said, "This will define me."
Ooh.
And the other one said, make this the defining moment.
Oh my goodness.
And every day, no kidding, for 6 months, I had to put down the baton that said this would define me. And I had to mentally pick up the baton that said, make this a defining moment.
Wow, that's powerful.
And for about 2 years, I mean, I really had this invisible coat of shame about what happened. And, my ego wasn't done, so I had to go out and prove that, all the things that they fired me for were wrong.
Right.
And, it's all schizophrenic, crazy stuff.
Sure.
And I sustained that for about maybe 2.5 years until I just couldn't do it anymore.
Did you get another job in corporate world or you?
As soon as I got fired, all my consultant friends said, "Yay, you're back."
Oh, okay.
And I was on 3 proposals that week.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. So it wasn't even for want of sustaining yourself. It was for needing to work out your ego and work out those sensitivities in your ego that it was so, it took you 2 years to get over it, right?
It did. And I started getting messages that said, clear your calendar as of January. I think it was January 2008. It kept saying, clear your calendar. And I'm like, clear my calendar? What does that mean? So, of course, what did I do? I ignored it. I signed another 2-month project extension. And it was like running through thick glue. Oh, my gosh. It was so hard to do that work. And I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. So I finished that. And then I bought a partnership in a company. Because, of course, I had to prove them wrong still. I was still holding on to that. And then we closed the company 3 months later, lost my investment.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was finally then I went on a sabbatical. And it was supposed to be for 30 days. And I had some wise friends who said, no, you need to do this for a year. And I'm like, a year? I can't do this for a year. They said, no, you can't do it for 30 days. You have to do it for a year. So I trusted the synchronicity. I took a 1-year sabbatical. And in that time, first of all, everybody kept saying, what are you doing? So are you writing a book? Are you, and I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I took a lot of workshops and all of a sudden energy healing just sort of popped up.
Right. Fascinating.
So I started doing work around that. And I wrote a blog called 1 Year in the Making. Beautiful. Where I chronicled my journey. And it was a great unfolding and really helped me to let go of a lot of things.
Oh, beautiful.
And at the end of that, I actually signed up for the Brennan School for Healing because I started taking energy workshops and I was freaked out because I was like, oh my gosh, what is this stuff? What am I doing? So I had to, my mental thing, I had to go learn more. So I spent 4 years and then another 2 years there. And as I came out of it, I knew in my final year there was something I needed to do. I didn't know what, something I needed to do. And it turns out it was
the podcast. The connection broke up a little bit. So the podcast is what came out.
Yeah. And again, my nephew was like, no, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, what's a podcast? And a friend said, yeah, a podcast. I'm like, okay.
And you're like, well, I'm going to pay attention this time. Last time it was like walking through glue.
Yeah, totally. It really was. And the podcast has been a great unfolding, not only for listeners, I'm at about 750,000 downloads, about 750. I'll probably be at about 1 million by the time I finish. But it's one of those things that you work the content and the content works you.
Yes. Well, that's what it's like working with clients. I mean, you're together with your hearts open, receiving, this divine flow. And that's why at the top of my show, I was saying, when you participate by listening. You're participating in this conversation. You're contributing your energy and your light to it.
Absolutely. And when I'm writing, and one of the things I actually found out that I love seclusion.
I know. Right. Well, you're very sensitive, and that's the case for very sensitive people, and we become even more sensitive. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. It's not a bad thing to become more sensitive. I think the world tells us that being sensitive or too sensitive is somehow a bad thing, but it doesn't mean you become a hermit and you can't go out in the world.
Right.
But it does mean you're quite satisfied with a much less stimulation, outside stimulation. So that's a great thing. It means you taste more, you feel more, you see more, and I think you have a broader extent to being able to perceive. Agree?
I agree with that. And there's another thing that I learned through the podcast is, especially with personal development, we would like to think, oh, there's things I want to fix, things that are wrong, I got to be better, right? And what I learned is how to take those unique personality characteristics and turn them into traits, things that are unique about us.
Yes, I like that. Kind of like the low vibration or the high vibration is how you could look at any trait, or if it's a quirk or something, or if you see it as a problem, then you're just seeing the low vibration version of it, maybe, right? Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. By the way, can I let everyone know that we are taking calls if you're listening or watching live? 323-524-2599. So sorry, continue with that, talking about the traits.
And so what I did is I really came to this recognition of, in my solitude, I literally am talking to people as I'm writing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really talking in my head as I'm writing, and I'm literally talking to who's ever listening.
Yes, I know what you mean. I can feel that as well. Isn't that beautiful?
And so it's now a way that I'm able to let people into my solitude.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? It's because of that telepathic component. You recognize now, whereas before you were taking in too much information because you didn't really have conscious awareness of what your gifts and your abilities and your sensory perception was. And now you're so aware of it, you can feel it in that high vibrational way.
Mm-hmm. And when I write the script, so it allows me to take time to really integrate, think about what I'm trying to communicate, what I really want the listener to get, and the key takeaways. And even when I'm reading it, I really go into this energetic place and speak from that place.
Beautiful.
Of centered, restful, this beautiful, energetic place that I love to be in, that I even transmit it or read it or, whatever from that place as well.
It definitely comes across. And in all time and space, yeah, absolutely. In all time and space, time and space is an illusion. And so that energetic conduit that you're activating, anytime anyone listens, it still works. We have a call. Would you like to take a call, Mary Jo?
Sure, I would love that.
Great. Hello, you're on the air. Who's this?
Hi, this is Tiffany.
Tiffany?
Yes.
Hi, Tiffany. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Long Island, New York.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We have Marijo Puleo on the air with us, too. Do you have anything on your mind that you want to ask or talk about? What's on your mind today, Tiffany?
I was just wondering how to develop my intuitive abilities. I feel like I'm on the surface of actually understanding them, but I don't really know if it's actually right.
Okay.
Or if it's just in my mind.
What a great question. Mary Jo, what do you think? What do you have for Tiffany?
Oh, so much I could say about this. I'll keep it brief. Intuition is a lot of noticing. Really noticing the information that you're taking in. The good news is that there's actually a lot of science that validates our intuition. The number one episode of my podcast is called What You Sense is Real. And I talk about research and applications. And throughout the podcast, I talk about ways that you can develop your intuition and hone it. But it really starts with noticing. And then the second piece is really about how you hold that information. And that's the personal development maturity piece that comes along with it. And so we get very excited, especially in the beginning, that, wow, that was true. I knew that. I sensed that. I saw that. And then being able to hold that information for yourself and possibly for the other in a way, one that doesn't freak them out, because I've had clients say things to me like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
So you don't want to scare them. But it just becomes like another piece of information. If you were an expert in reading body language and you were talking to somebody, you would be noticing a lot about their body language and what the possible meaning of how they use their hands, how they nod their head, what they do with their eyes. It becomes part of the whole way of taking in another person. And it just adds more information for you to notice and to be able to receive that person. And so there's a lot of very specific things and ways that you can develop your intuition, ways that you can practice. And even, like I used to do things like I would go sit in a park and I would talk to the trees.
Absolutely. And believe what the information that comes forth. That's a big part of the that's kind of like the personal development part, because it's validating yourself.
And over time, you learn to trust the information more and more. That really, really comes with experience. And the best are, they say, 80% accurate. And so, if you're not 100%, like no one's 100%.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why you want to hold it gently, because I hold them as hypotheses. Like, I got this little bit of information. I wonder what this means. I wonder what this says about the person. I wonder what this says about me or the situation. And it leads me to be more curious. Not that I sort of hold it with stranglehold and say, oh, no, this is what I got. And this is what it is. You just allow it to keep blending into what you know or what you're sensing.
And if you think about it, when we have a conversation between, just with another person, just a speaking regular conversation, if we understood 80% of what the other person said, that would be a pretty good record, I would think.
Right.
So, and not only that, but when we are doing something where we're sensing something intuitively, and let's say there's another person that we are presenting it to and saying, this is what I'm getting, like in the case of a reading or something, there's also a lot of times that they don't recognize it. Sometimes it comes up later. And I know that from my own personal experience of getting readings, and I'll be like, I don't know what that means. But then sure enough, it pops up later. And I don't always go back to the person who gave me the reading and say, guess what? That thing, showed up, because if it's a professional situation, I'm not going to take their time that way. But, so you just, it's all about, you're still a person, even though you're connecting with this kind of higher understanding and higher perspective. It's still coming through the filter. You know what, Tiffany, what I would love to recommend a couple of, first of all, start reading things, like just start reading and watching videos like you are today, listening to podcasts, reading books, because when you start to place your attention in those areas, then it's just going to grow. And that's something that's a quantum physical law, that as we place our awareness on something, it changes and it grows and it expands. So I have a book that you might like to read. I love reading books on Kindle and I just read them on my iPad. I don't even have a special Kindle device, because it's instant gratification, and I just read as much as I want to read, and then if it starts to become not as inspiring for me, I'll put it down for a while. It's not like school where you have to read every single word. I may pick it up again later, but I think really just chasing your curiosity is a great way to start opening up and understanding your own special gifts. So there's one by an author named Penny Pierce, and it's called The Intuitive's Way, I believe. And Jarvis is probably, if you're watching the video, Jarvis will put that up. And also, there is a teacher who I am involved with, and her name is Crystal Ann Compton. And I'm not sure if she has this up right now, but she has in the past had a class called Everything Psychic. And this is just an online self-paced class, and her prices for her classes are ridiculously underpriced, like for the amount of content she gives. But go on Crystal's site because she has all these really great classes. And when you take one of her classes, then you get to have access to this community called the Lightworkers Lab. And that is a fantastic place, a really supportive community, because I think fellowship is really important for this kind of development stage too. Having other people who support, like, yes, I feel that way too, and this is how it is for me, and being able to basically let your freak flag fly.
Okay. Sounds good.
I would also add one other thing to that: journaling.
Oh, good point. Yes, because when you journal and then you go look at it later, like that's how when I met one of my guides, I was journaling about my experience with her for a couple of months. And then I ended up finding out by looking at census records that she was my great-grandmother. And I had those names in that journal. So talk about validation, because if I hadn't been journaling it, I'd been like, I'm crazy. That wasn't the name I was thinking of. You know what I mean? So that
Right. Wow, that's cool.
Very powerful. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and having other people as kindred spirits, huge. That is huge.
Fellowship is big. Yeah. Do you have any friends that are sharing these feelings or experiences right now, Tiffany?
No.
Okay.
No one, just on Facebook, actually.
Well, yeah, just start with your little private, all of the stuff we're talking about here, chasing your curiosity. But, I think really check out Crystal, her website, and the Lightworkers Lab community, because I just can't tell you how wonderful and supportive and really development related it is. All kinds of free education there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
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 We have more calls. Shall we take another call or two, Mary Jo?
Sure.
All right, great.
Sure. That was a great question, by the way, Tiffany.
I loved that question. Hello, you're on the air. Who's this? Oops.
Angelina.
Oh, hi, Angelina. How are you? I didn't hear you for a second. Where are you calling from?
Hi. I wasn't sure I was on. I'm calling from Orlando, Florida.
Oh, wonderful. Well, welcome. What is on your mind today?
Thank you. I was wondering if you had any messages or any guidance, specifically in the area of just my career, my job, that area.
Okay, great. Mary Jo, do you want to start?
Specifically, what are you looking to change careers? Are you looking to do more of this work in your life?
No. So I was laid off in November and have been just on the hunt, for the last 6 months or so, with no bites. So I'm kind of questioning, do I completely change careers or do I go back to a previous one that I had? Just kind of at a crossroads trying to figure out what's next. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when I feel into your energy field, I do feel this sort of back and forth of a little bit of ambivalence over one of your choices.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like there's something more positive and more in alignment with what you really want to do that's waiting for you.
Yeah, I get that as well. I feel like Mary Jo said, one of your choices. I do feel like it is the one that you just left. And so it kind of like if you heard Mary Jo's story in the beginning, it was really, she was walking through glue because basically the field or the universe is not you're not aligned with that choice anymore, and that's why the bites aren't happening. What I got a positive feeling from when you said go back to something that I used to do, but that is something that can just give you some stability while you pursue the positive thing, because you have something positive in your heart. It feels very artistic and very creative, and you know it, but you are afraid to express it. You're afraid I've never done this before. You're not supposed to be able to just change your career and start doing this thing, and you haven't really shared it with anyone yet. And you're looking for you're hoping right now, like maybe this is validating it a little bit. Is this making sense? You feel this?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Definitely.
So I think that it's okay to go ahead and find some stability in something else, but to positively pursue that new stuff.
So what I keep feeling is she needs to start blending it.
Oh.
Start blending that into your life, in small ways, and allow it to keep growing. So I keep hearing blending, keep blending, bringing it in, because it feels very deep and very protected, cherished. Cherished is more the word. And so small ways that you can bring it out into the world will help build your confidence and help you to start snowballing this and bringing this out in a stronger way without necessarily having to make that huge leap. That in between stage of building some stability makes sense.
And just know that what the world may have shown you before about what is possible isn't necessarily true. You can release that and go into your heart and what you feel about it and what excites you about what you could create. Well, wouldn't it be great if I could make X amount of money by doing this thing? And you go, well, no one else does this. That doesn't matter, but that's because you're the one who needs to do it. That's because that's the flower that you are.
Wow.
Very true.
Wow.
That feels good to you,
Yeah,
Angelina?
Yeah, it resonates so much.
Okay.
I mean, that is kind of what's hinging me going forward in that decision. It's never looked like that before. How or why did it look like that for me?
Right.
But it can.
Yeah. So just go ahead and when that pops up, like no one else does that just be like, that's okay. Just release it and say thank you for your advice, but you can move along. Thank you for your opinion. And then just keep going deep into your own heart and just put together those pieces and set those intentions. Say, this is the shiny, beautiful, creative thing that I love. And this is how I want it. This is how I want to express it. And you can be specific about how much money you want to make from it and that kind of stuff. And say, these are the pieces and this is my focus. And again, like quantum physics says, we put our awareness on something, it expands. Yeah. And I like that blending. Mary Jo, like you can use that old work that's keeping you stable right now so that you're comfortable and relaxed. And you can bring it in there and just be comfortable with yourself about it. Yeah.
I keep seeing a path. I see a path before you. And I would encourage you to keep visualizing that path and keep asking what's the next step in that path.
That's nice.
Ask to have the path help laying out that path for yourself, Angelina.
Yeah. How's that sound? Sound good to
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies.
You're so welcome.
Excellent.
Thank you for calling in. Let us know how it goes. Check back in another time.
I will.
All right, great.
Bye-bye.
Oh, what lovely souls calling in today, huh, Mary Jo?
Excellent questions. Yes.
Really great questions. Well, let's see. Let's talk about how I would love for you to speak on how spiritual awakening and personal development work together. Because when you say mindful living, basically you're talking about that being that path of personal development, and it is a path. It isn't a destination. And not a full destination. You arrive and then you're done. It is the journey. So
very much so.
So how do these two work together?
And I think that is a most awesome question. And it's taken a lot of episodes to try and address that. I'd like to talk about them separately and then talk about them together.
Perfect.
Because from the spiritual awakening aspect, a lot of people are having spiritual experiences that, and crazy things like Kundalini awakening. I did 2 episodes on Kundalini awakening. I learned so much about my own awakening just doing those 2 episodes.
Wow.
And I have like 2 pages of symptoms. It's got to be at least about 100 symptoms that are listed on that chart at the end of the script. So many things are happening to so many people and they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
I mean, I say that in my intro. Is this also my awakening? Like, is this my development? So when we talk about development, there's basically three steps, 3 phases. And they talk about this in the book, The Power of Flow, which is one of my favorite books.
The Power of Flow. Good.
The power of flow. That stage one is, and I tell my clients all the time, come home to yourself.
Yes.
We send out our energy on missions, as Carolyn May says, we send our energy out on missions all the time. Like, go figure out what's going on over there and over there. I don't feel safe, blah, blah, blah. Right. So the first step is really to come home to yourself, to feel centered. What's going on with you? What are your needs? How to be with yourself without being selfish. How to really become more centered, understand your own energy, your own, character and personality, your own spiritual things. Phase two then is then we work in relationship with others, because, there's a lot that we also learn.
Yes.
But the problem is we often work in relationship, but we don't have this stage one, right? So we have difficulty in relationship because we don't know what's going on here.
Right.
So working with ourselves, working in relationships. So really working that dynamic over time with that development, and with tools like mindfulness and self-development and learning some of the things that I talk about in the podcast, we get to stage 3, which is really much more about living in synchronicity and flow. Now, part of that is that we've done our own clearing work.
Yes.
That Kundalini is a huge clearing process. Like, there's a lot that happens. And if you haven't looked at it before, like I said, when I got fired, I had to kick the can down the road, right?
Right.
Some things I clearly had to look at in my life, and I feel like I'm a different person 10 years later. When you start to marry the two of them together, and so you have somebody who's not very mindful, just kind of going along, semi-conscious state, not very spiritually aware. They're just kind of going through life, and life,
Sure.
They're in the current of life, and things, they may blame life, they may, but life seems to carry them along, and they do what they need to do.
Mary Jo, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your microphone is kind of rubbing on your jacket again.
Okay.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank
Perfect.
you. So then someone who is spiritually aware and very mindful, they're able to marry those two things together in that's when grace flows.
Yes.
That's when, you're really living in synchronicity and flow, when you have a lot of integrity, courage, all of these, happens when you align with the flow of the universe, rather than trying to make it flow your way. That's a great definition.
Yes.
So you're participating in life in a very quantum way that you were talking about earlier. Some of the challenges happen when we have spiritual awakening, but we don't have the maturity to hold it.
Right.
And I was there. I'll raise my hand. I totally was like, stuff was happening, and I had no capacity or ego strength or life skills to be able to work with it. And in a mild way, I call them rookies. I wrote a book called How to Choose an Energy Healer, and I talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh, nice.
People who are well-meaning, but they kind of don't know how to work with this, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, this is happening. That was me. That's why I got scared and went to school for 4 years. On the worst end, though, are people who use it to manipulate.
Of course. And that is possible. That is absolutely possible.
People who haven't done the ego work, the first half of our life, we strengthen our ego so that we can let go of it and transcend it. And that's when we move into the spiritual awakening aspect of it. If we haven't done that ego work, that self-development, there's just the potential for abuse. There's the potential for power over people, and, some of those kind of icky things that we don't like to talk about.
I don't know if you've heard of this author. His name is Amit Goswami, and you've heard of, yes. So I heard him talk about this, which really resonates with me when you're saying that we spend first half of our life basically working out our ego so that we can transcend it. And he discussed this same thing. And by the way, that's why I think a lot of people have this kind of grand metaphysical awakening or opening later in life, because you've worked out a lot of that stuff. You've done personal development. And I remember Goswami saying that, likening it to, he's like, you need to work out. You can become spiritually enlightened and not have worked out you can kind of do a shortcut to enlightenment. So you go up on a mountain, you seclude yourself and you meditate, but you haven't worked out that ego and its sensitivities out there in the world. Right. So then that's when something like certain kinds of religious leaders, and they actually are powerful teachers, and being around them is enlightening and you feel it, but then they get themselves into scandals because they don't know how to not succumb to temptations of sex or, drugs or some other kind of social stuff, because that ego is still too sensitive and you're unable to control it. So I think that spiritual awakening and that aspect of it is really a catalyst. It's a popping open. Mm-hmm. And then the development is a sustaining kind of factor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very true. In fact, my next episode is all about the shadow.
Oh, I love it. Yes. Working on the
I
shadow.
Talk about the work of Debbie Ford and Brene Brown and shame, and, how we hold this so closely. I mean, and I talk about, again, for 2 years, I held that shame around being fired so tightly. Mm-hmm. And shame is just this thing that really lurks. It's such a powerful force on our life.
Oh, it is.
And until it pops up, and then we see how much is there and how much we spend our life sort of avoiding it. Mm. But that's just simply the shadow that, things to address, things to be with. Just allow ourselves to experience all that is here to experience. In mindfulness, we talk a lot in mindfulness about noticing. Notice what you notice. Notice what's going on. Notice your intuition. Notice this. That's the first step in mindfulness. Mm-hmm. Mindfulness is really allowing yourself to hold whatever comes up with acceptance. To be with whatever is there and hold that with acceptance. But at the heart of it is this purity of connection that once you experience it, it blows your mind.
Yes. Yes.
And you just, once you experience it, it's like you want more of it. The purity of that heart connection, of seeing that person, of being just holding loving presence for yourself and the other, and welcoming and accepting and just being curious. And everything continues to just unfold in the present moment. Ron Kurtz calls it the pregnant mystery of the moment. Ooh. That, we spend so much of our time projecting what we think is going to happen, and we don't even know that we're projecting. We don't know that we're in transference with this person. We keep doing these mindless scripts. Noticing is the first step, but then bringing your full self to that experience. Then you're in synchronicity. Then you're in flow. Then the inner world and the outer world are matched up. And you truly do get how much we create our own experience, that we are creators.
Yes.
And see that divine essence.
And we can accept our creations. You can accept your creation as always a message, as a blessing and a message. So if something is seemingly negative, and I'm using air quotes about that, it's a message. It's just a messenger, and you created it for a reason. I recently had this really interesting, kind of subtle, it's really not a big deal, but I came home and I was starving and, just had not eaten a meal in time. And so my husband and I ordered food from Uber Eats. So, I don't know if the whole country has that, but Uber basically has a food delivery service. They go pick up food from a restaurant. And I was so hungry and waiting for him to show up, and the person delivered it, and I took it inside, and it was just completely the wrong order, and it was all stuff that I pretty much can't eat because I can't eat grain. And panicking, and I for a second, and I was like, whoa, that's weird. Bad things don't happen to me. I was surprised by it. I was like, oh, so this must not be a bad thing either, because things always go my way. And as soon as I did that, then everything started to change. I realized, well, I could eat the Brussels sprouts in the bag. And then they ended up sending us not only our food, but giving us a gift for free. They also gave us a gift certificate for the amount. So we ended up making money on the deal. But for a second there, I was like about to panic because I was challenged being so hungry. Like the body was kind of compounding that moment. But that mindfulness component just really kicked in. That's my habit now. And I was like, oh, wait, no. Things just go my way. Things flow. I created this for some reason. It turned out to be a really cool reason because I noticed that is my habit for the most part now. I got to see that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the way that and it's just slowing down that reaction, allowing ourselves to pause, to really, the spaciousness of opening up, wait a minute. And it creates clarity.
Yes. And peace.
When you opened up, clarity flowed in.
Yes, it did. In being in, that deeply mindful state and being in flow, it's like this combination, this dichotomy of deep peace, clarity as well, and also excitement. And I think that's what bliss is. Bliss is peace and excitement at once. Mm-hmm. Jarvis said, Jarvis, no, that's okay. Jarvis, the producer, he's over there, he liked that one.
Well, and once you experience it, you're like, wow, this is really cool. This is not boring.
Yeah, right. It's not boring. That's right.
Peaceful is boring. And it's like, no, peaceful is not boring.
Right. Peaceful is not boring, indeed.
Because you just keep staying open. Wow, look at what's going on here. Yeah. Wow, this is interesting. And it just leads you on, when Byron Katie, when she does the work, she always talks about when you contemplate the 4 questions, and people just start writing them.
Yeah.
She's like, no. Do it in a meditative state.
Yes. I love her inquiry because you do have to do it in a meditative state because you can't be literal in order to really make the discovery. If you all haven't heard of Byron Katie, Loving What Is a book and I actually have it on audio, and I love listening to that when I'm driving. So I highly recommend Byron Katie's teaching. So fascinating. It's just so profound, I think. And it talks about, being free of that mind chatter that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And just being able to really deeply recognize your creations, I think, is how it pertains to what we're talking about.
Well, and what was interesting was my coach had the book laying out when I was in her waiting room, and I started reading it, and I went home and I bought it. But when I started reading it, at the time I was going on long walks, like hour and a half, 2-hour walks every day. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed was as I was walking, suddenly my mind screen, it was like a ticker tape of all my thoughts going across. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Wow, look at my thoughts. Look at what's going on. And I was able to really observe them. And it really caused an awakening experience in me.
Like a disidentification from them. So you aren't your thoughts. You have your thoughts. You own them. Oh, we have a call. We have a few minutes left and we have a call. Excellent. Let's take a quick call and then we'll probably have to sign off after that. Hi there. Who's this? Hello?
This is Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. Where are you calling from?
Hello? I'm calling from the Chicago area.
Hi, sweetheart. What's on your mind today?
Well, I was actually kind of curious. Like you guys were talking about kind of flow and being in the moment. And I'm kind of curious if this is kind of along those lines. So like I was traveling to Canada for work. And the funniest thing before I left 2 weeks ago, I said, oh, just watch with my luck. I'm going to meet the guy of my dreams up in Canada. Uh-huh. Lo and behold, I met a guy while I was up there, and we completely hit it off. Oh. Like the rest of the week that I was up there that week, we spent as much time as we could. I was up there just this past week again, and then I'm going to see him again next weekend because I have to go up for work again. And he's just like, oh my God, I've never met a girl like you. It's like, who are you? Where did you come from? I mean, we're both just like, this is just incredible, but we're both like, but you live in another country. So I'm kind of curious on, like that whole thing. Like, is that just something that we can ultimately make work, or is that just kind of like one of us put that out there that we were going to meet a fabulous person, and we did.
Well, I think that the choices are quite dynamic. I think it's yes to all of those things. Unfortunately, there's no yes, it's going to work. And by the way, if it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you weren't in flow when it all happened. It doesn't negate your wonderful experiences. You know, we have free will in every single moment, and so we get to experience something with someone and then decide if we want to continue to have experiences together. What do you think, Mary Jo? Would you agree? I mean, I definitely say the short answer, yes, of course that's flow. Of course that's intuitive, you know, and what it's going to mean next is up to you guys, is what I think. What do you think,
Absolutely.
Mary Jo?
Yeah. I'll share with you, when I was 18, I had told somebody that I'm going to marry a man who's between 15 and 20 years older than me. And now when you're 18, that's a pretty remarkable statement.
Yeah. That is. It's weird.
It took 20 years for that to come true.
And it happened?
And it happened.
Oh my
husband
gosh.
is 16 years older than I am.
Just between
That's amazing.
16, you said 15 and 20? So you just made it over the line.
So he just made it.
He just made the cut.
But here's the funny thing, is that in that 20-year span, I kept saying, and I married a guy who was 4 years younger than me the first time, right? And I kept saying, I'm supposed to marry a guy 15 to 20 years older than me. And in those 20 years, I met a lot of guys who were between 15 and 20 years older than me. Tons of guys, tons, at work, all over the place. But when I met him, I knew.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so that premonition, I love the synchronicity of what you're sharing and the premonition of, I'm going to meet a guy. And, we can talk about lives between lives, which is a couple of episodes. It may have been predestined.
Right.
But just keep flowing with it. Just keep staying present, mindful. What does this feel like? And just keep deciding. Keep deciding in alignment with your own self and him and for each other.
Right. And, that whole we live in different countries and all that kind of stuff, you don't have to deal with that right now. That's not to be dealt with today, So just going back to staying present and following that excitement, whatever it is, because when we feel excitement, that means we're resonating, we're aligning with our higher self. And that's the clue.
Well, the funny thing is, it's like he's like, we're getting married. He's like, we're just totally getting married. And it doesn't scare me. Anytime anybody else has ever said that, I'm like, I get scared. I mean, I've been married before, but like the ex-boyfriend, when he was talking about that, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I kept pushing off the subject, and it doesn't scare me.
That's great. Yeah, just keep going with all of those feelings.
I feel that in you. Yes, I do.
It feels peaceful. It feels like that excitement and peace at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Let us know how it goes, Lisa. Thanks for calling.
Will do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, I think we just have about a minute or so left. Mary Jo, will you tell everyone again how they can get in contact with you?
Sure. The best way is through my website, marijopuleo.com. And that's MARIJO. My sister liked to double dot the I and the J. So it's MARIJO. PULEO.com.
And your podcast
is Mindful Living Spiritual Awakening. It's on iTunes, it's on Podbean, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, a ton of places that you can find it.
Again, very, very informative, very educational, very resourceful. And, and Mary Jo has a ton of services up on her website as well. So, that's going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much, Dr. Marijo Puleo, for being here with us today on Mother's Day. And Charmed Life is live every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Facebook and Periscope, and also on Universal Broadcasting Network. That's ubnradio.com, Channel 1. And so until next week, I'm Tricia Carr. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.